Talking to you, Tony Suarez, this is an exciting time. And I got to just tell you something, because Sammy Rodriguez is the reason you and I know each other.
Yes, sir.
And you may not know this, Sammy calls me Dad a lot. I'm getting old enough to be about everybody's dad and maybe everybody's granddad. But it means the world to me to be close to Sammy. I remember that Eric Trump was telling me before a lengthy meeting that all of us had with the president. He said, you know, my dad's concerned about this guy, Sammy Rodriguez. I said, the only thing your dad needs to be concerned about, Eric, is whether or not Sammy Rodriguez is sitting right by him and hearing him, because this man, he is really great and he moves people. What is the name of the organization that Sammy is basically, you might say, the head of, but boy, you're right there. It's a Hispanic representation group that is powerfully influential. Over 40,000 churches here and nearly 500,000 around the world that you all impact. Tell me the name of that organization. Tony Suarez, I'm glad to have you here.
Well, James, thank you for having me on the program. It's called the National Hispanic Christian Leadership Conference. Pastor Sam serves as the president. I have the privilege of serving as COO. And as you said, it's now over 45,000 churches around the country, and its sole purpose is to be a movement of righteousness and justice, to be both Martin Luther King and Billy Graham, to help the church meet the nexus of the cross, be both horizontal and vertical, and in that speak truth to power.
Well, okay, now you've been doing that very consistently, but you actually were invited into a circle that, you know how much I was a part of that, and how much I was able to help Sammy by getting the Assembly of God superintendent to come in, that he felt comfortable coming in also. Now, you've been 4 years, more than 4 years, in these small meetings with the president, in meetings where he invited us to come in and speak our minds to him and all of his cabinet leaders that were there, and everyone there totally openly. The American people, Christians, people that love God, people that love freedom, they want to know, does this man actually receive you? Do you believe he listens, and do you believe he actually cares what you Hispanic people care about? How do you answer
Absolutely.
that?
100%. I believe I have found the president to be a man of integrity. He's charming. He's funny. He receives us. And in fact, I think he loves being around fellow believers. I think he loves being around the ministry. I believe he loves hearing what thus saith the Lord. He's very respectful when we pray for him, when we give counsel. And I've found, and what I've told others, is you don't even have to agree with everything that the president says. But come to him, come man to man or woman to man, and speak to him. If you're going to go on a social media tangent, you're not going to be well received. But if you'll speak to him, which is the honorable thing to do, he'll receive you, and he might not agree back, but he'll respect that you came and spoke to him. I remember the first time meeting, at that point, candidate Trump at Trump Tower, and we were talking about building walls, and there was a lot of things that were said about the Hispanic community. I didn't know, I'd never met him before. I didn't know what to think. I went with Pastor Sam. I believe you were in the room, and others were there at the top of Trump Tower. And Pastor Sam, when it came to him, I love him. He's not just my boss, he's my brother. He says he's Batman and I'm Robin. I won't wear tights though, so that's why I can't actually be Robin. But I remember sitting in that room, and after candidate Trump had talked about what he imagined would happen with a future plan for immigration, Pastor Sam spoke up and he said, President Trump, if you must build a wall, build it, but you must also build a bridge. And I remember the president being receptive and saying, okay, and I don't call him Sammy, but okay, Sammy, so what's that bridge look like? And it opened a door. It opened a bridge of dialogue where we could say, okay, build a wall. But you also, there's also 14 million people that are entrapped in a country and so on and so forth. I don't want to bore with the details, but we found a man that was receptive, open, and he loves people. He loves people, and he loves children. He loves dreamers. And that's why he's working, in my opinion, very diligently and very hard to be an answer to the problem rather than be antagonistic like other politicians that have been in office now for over 3 decades.
I remember that meeting so well. And let me just tell you, standing at the elevator before we went up to the boardroom, and if you remember, Mr. Trump was at the other end of the table and I was at this end, because I was going to tell people how it was that we even got in there. And it was Ben Carson that got us meeting together. And then I was able to encourage others to come in that had not come in. And then those that were there from even before that particular meeting had actually prayed for him. I'm standing by the elevator and the phone rings, my cell phone. And it's Mr. Trump up in the boardroom by himself. And he said, now, Eric said you told him about this Sammy Rodriguez guy. He's a powerful guy. And, you know, Eric said, boy, I could really trust him. And he said he heard him on Fox News this morning, and he said it's one of the greatest things he ever heard. And he said, I just wonder where this guy really is. And I said, well, I'm going to tell you something in a moment. You're going to be sitting about 4 feet from him. He's going to be looking you straight in the face, and you're going to meet him head on yourself. And that's exactly what happened when he talked about the wall. Sammy said you got to build some bridges. You got to have gates where people can get in. And let me tell you, the president listened, did he not? He listened, and he sincerely cared
and I think
about what's best.
He's gone above and beyond what we even were asking for originally.
Well, I'm telling you what, Sammy said he believed God would use the Hispanics to put panic in the heart of the enemy, and I believe he is. The enemy has gone ballistic because he's lost ground. He lost what he considered important ground, we considered sacred ground that we regained concerning the right to life, a limited government, a government that doesn't overregulate until it hurts the people, where you don't allow other countries to take advantage of our goodness with foolishness on our part. And I'm telling you, this president has stood up for that, and we have seen changes with the Justice Department and great judges and justices appointed that can change everything for generations to come, because this man has done what he said he would do. Now, do you see him working toward what is actually best for the Hispanic community, like you said, including the dreamers? Because the media will never tell the people the truth.
The media will never tell the truth, but the answer to that is yes. We have not had immigration reform for over 3 decades. Now let that sink in. If I didn't do my job for 30 days, I don't get to be on Zoom with James Robison representing Pastor Sam today. But we have elected officials that haven't done their job for over 3 decades, but they're pointing their fingers at a man that's been in office for 4 years, well, 3.5 years, as if he was the problem. President Obama passed this deferred action called DACA. The first word, that D stands for deferred, which means, and forgive the sarcasm, but it means we won't deport you today, we'll deport you tomorrow. We'll deport you at a later time, which the government will set. So we were cautiously celebratory when it passed, because of the ineptitude of our Congress, during Obama's last term. But we knew that we needed a permanent solution. The issue here has not been what the White House has done or hasn't done. It is the lack of work, the lack of progress that comes out of the House and the Senate. But we don't hold them accountable. They represent we the people, but what we have is a celebrity culture. Forgive me if I'm on a tangent, but we have like this celebrity culture in DC that's akin to Hollywood, and they think that we've elected them to represent their values and their stances. They're our surrogates. They're supposed to represent we the people. And an enormous multitude of evangelicals want immigration reform. Hispanics want immigration reform, but they don't want amnesty. No one has ever asked for amnesty. We have to secure the border. We have to deport terrorists and drug dealers and rapists and murderers and all of that. And then after we've solved that problem, those that are willing to pledge allegiance to the flag, learn English, pass a background check, they should be allowed to stay in the country. And we've only asked, now here's the clincher, if you will. We've sought a pathway to legalization. And now for the second time in a year and a half, the president has gone above and beyond that. So that's why it's important. When you hear the criticism that comes, with all due respect, from the Speaker of the House, the president has asked for a pathway to citizenship. He's going above and beyond what we're even asking, but that's not noted and it's not celebrated. But he has to act because our Congress does not act. And that's where we find ourselves. And beyond that, James, this is a fight for the church. I lived for 15 years in Virginia Beach, just a few minutes from First Landing, where those settlers came over 400 years ago. A dear friend, a mentor to me is a wonderful lady named Bishop Ann Jimenez, who told me the story over and over again, how those boats came to First Landing. They prayed and fasted for 3 days. They planted a cross and they dedicated the land to the evangelization of the gospel of Jesus Christ. There is a covenant between God and this land, so that the world might know that Jesus Christ is Lord. And if and it's such a powerful covenant that if its current inhabitants would try to turn away from God, God caused a wave, in my opinion, it's not doctrine, it's my opinion, God caused a wave of immigrants to come into the land. I'm not talking about legal and illegal. I'm saying he caused a wave of people to come that are the revival of the North American church. So to me, everything we see going on, even political strife, It's all connected to this attack from the kingdom of darkness against the church and the covenant that this land has with our God to make sure that Jesus is known to the ends of the earth.
Tony, let's just wrap this thing up with just absolute truth. If the side that is right now causing the resistance, you referred to them, the left, opposite of right,
Yeah.
and really and truly, from my point of view, from a biblical point of view, it's non-biblical. It's not a Christian worldview, but it's not going to serve Hispanics' desires and legitimate needs well, or anybody's. If the left wins, will it hurt the Hispanics and their future? Even those right now that are confused, if they allow the left to win, if Mr. Trump wins, do you believe that he will help, with all the influence he has, move forward in a positive way for the Hispanic people, including all of these you've referenced?
Well, to everyone watching, but especially my Hispanic brothers and sisters, it will hurt your religious freedom. It'll hurt your economy. It'll hurt the way we school and educate our children. I lost my first wife during that first campaign when he was then president. When he was running for president, I became mom and dad to my kids. That's when I made my decision. I lost my first wife to leukemia. I became mom and dad to my kids, and all of a sudden, all of these motherly instincts came on me. And the concern that I had, not just for my children today, but for their future and for my grandchildren, I realized how powerful that vote is. And I encourage every Hispanic watching to think about that. Your vote is a voice for the voiceless, not just for those that can't vote, but for your children, your children's children, and yet even those that are far off. This is to save the future of our country. And as a friend told me recently, every election, if we win, when we win in 2020, we don't hang our hat and take a break. We keep fighting, because there's always another generation coming that deserves us fighting to preserve what we know to be true.
Well, after 4 years of being close to Mr. Trump, been around him a lot, traveling with him, talking to him, I believe that he wants what's best for the Hispanic people, period, and for every person. He is as non-racist individual as I've ever seen. He wants the best for all races. He wants the best for the overlooked, the forgotten, the poor. And he wants everybody to have opportunity that's not limited by an overreaching, out of control federal government trying to make everybody dependent upon them and under their thumb. And I'm telling you, I just say this to all the Hispanics. I say it to every American. You are voting on the future of freedom in November. Your freedom, but also where freedom goes around the world. It's most serious ever. Tony, thank you so much. Give my regards to Sammy Rodriguez and tell him to keep pressing in and pressing on. I love you, man.
Thank you, James. We love you.